chatted up about the results. Obviously, we've got most game ones, I think all game ones now out of the way for the NBA. I had posted my Lakers prediction as far as how they could possibly try to beat the Nuggets. And, so anyway, let me save that one for last. So obviously, we all know what happened here, depending on how closely you follow the playoffs. The last game we'll go with first, which was the OKC New Orleans game. New Orleans had lost kind of the pseudo play-in game at the end of the season to the Lakers. Then they lost the actual 7-8 play-in to the Lakers, which dropped them into the winner of the Sacramento Warriors matchup. And then the Sacramento Kings dispatched the Warriors, which meant that you had a game basically for the 8th seed between New Orleans, who lost the 7-8 game, and the winner of the 9-10 game, which was the Kings. I really thought the Kings would win this game. Malik Monk was saying he was going to come back next week if they had got in, and but for some reason, all season long, the Pelicans just have the Kings number. It's so bizarre that some teams just have other teams' numbers despite any kind of real logical reason why. It was a really good team effort by New Orleans, and New Orleans gave another really good effort tonight. And Zion's been sitting with a hamstring issue. He went out at the end of the Laker game when it looked like they were going to rally and have a chance to win. LeBron and AD used their experience to take that game home and get themselves into the 7 seed. But tonight OKC battled. It was a really close game, but they were at home and they were able to ultimately take a 1-0 lead, 94-92 over New Orleans. So it all just depends on Zion. If Zion can come back, that series could go long. As you saw tonight, New Orleans was competing even without him. But I think the longer the series goes on, the more confidence OKC is going to be like, okay, yeah, we are the 1 seed. The issue that OKC has in the postseason is that their primary scorer and distributor is the same person. And when that happens, I mean, you could say that for a lot of teams, but I mean, he's really their primary go to guy, right? They don't really have a number two scorer. They have a bunch of guys who can score, who can shoot. The Jalen Williamses and, the Lou Dort and Chet Holmgren's, good and emerging and all of that. But if you can double team or shut down Shea, it goes a long way to having you compete in a game like this. And sure enough, New Orleans was able to compete. I mean, it was a 2 point game. 2 point game. That's one basket, a 3 pointer away from winning, right? So if they clean up a couple things, maybe they can do that. But OKC, we're going to see the longer this series goes on. If New Orleans can get a game in OKC, that's really what's going to determine this series, right? They've got to pick up a game. If they can win game two, another really close game, and find a way to get home in that game, then they're going to have a shot to win. If not, then OKC could very well go down. But if they lose to the Pelicans in the first round, then all the people who were talking crap about Shannon Sharp saying they're the weakest 1 seed. Look, I understand that the West was an enormously difficult conference this year, and a lot of weird things happened in the last couple of days of the season that ended up with them being number one as opposed to number two or number three. So I get that, and but they did finish number one. And you got to give OKC their respect, and that's because they beat up on all the teams that they were supposed to all season long, which is what you're supposed to do when you're a good team. But against really good teams, though, especially in the postseason, they're going to scheme your best players, hard. So that means they're going to have to really be great to overcome it, or they're going to have to depend on their teammates. And good players will depend on their teammates. So we're going to see how the OKC Thunder adjust. They should not have won this game by 2 points, but they got it done, and that's all that counts on the scorecard as far as the series goes. So we're going to see what happens with moving forward in OKC and what they can do. Another game that happened tonight that a lot of people were actually kind of surprised by was the Milwaukee Bucks and Indiana Pacers. Interesting because Giannis is out, right? And a lot of people thought because of the regular season and a lot of different things that happen, whether it's an in-season tournament or just the other games those teams played throughout the season, that Indiana would come in and really be, take over in this series. And sure enough, Damian Lillard finally showed up and said, "Hey, I am that guy. I'm not deferring and just trying to make it work in this game. Like I'm going to do whatever I have to get this game home." And he enabled the Bucks to really dominate, really from start to finish against Indiana in Game One. Now it's in Milwaukee, so again, these series, none of them really start until somebody loses a home game. Because when you lose a home game, then suddenly you're like, "Oh," right? So that determines a lot. So Indiana could still come back and have a really good game and squeak one out in game two, and then suddenly they go back to Indiana for 2 games and they're in really good shape, right? So it's all in context of that. But if Dame continues to play like Dame can with the supporting cast around him playing well, I mean, even without Giannis, you've still got Bobby Portis and Brooke Lopez. These guys can score, they can rebound, they can play good defense inside. they could play against Turner and and be able to handle that. So there's a lot of great things that happen there. But is Tyrese Halliburton going to take that next step that Team USA sees when they select a guy like him, and that he was doing to help lead them, even though not successfully during the USA competition last offseason, or is he not ready to take that next step yet? And maybe playing with Team USA and some more veteran guys this offseason will help him overcome that. We're about to find out the answers to all those questions. But Dame, this is what Dame wanted to come to Milwaukee for, is this moment. And he showed it, and he said, "Hey, this is what I'm here to do. I didn't go away from my family all season long to come here and let you guys punk me just because Giannis is sitting over there on the bench." And the Bucks have a lot riding on this. If they don't win this series, this Dame Giannis Doc Rivers experiment is bad for everybody. So they've got a lot to prove, and they've got the pieces to do it. Milwaukee's got shooters. You got to guard Beasley. A guy like Beverly is going to grit and grind whoever he's facing. And he had a big steal tonight, and Beasley had a big shot, and that's what the role players are what's going to make it work when they shut down or go after your best option that's dominating them. Then the role players have to step up, and that's what happened for Milwaukee tonight. They got that, plus they got Dame stepping up, and so Indiana's got to figure out some way to either trap Dame or do something different and stop those role players from just killing them. You're going to give up a couple open shots against a couple guys, but you don't want the open shot to be Dame. Definitely don't want that, because you don't want to leave him open from anywhere really past half court. I mean, let's be honest. So we'll see what happens there. But 1-0, 109-94, so not a huge margin of victory. And that's actually closer than the game probably was, to be honest with you. The big surprise of the night to me, although it almost became a mimic of history, was the Clippers. They won 109-97 against Dallas. Now, granted, the Clippers are at home. But Kawhi didn't play in this game, even though he's already announced he's playing for Team USA. Somehow he knows he'll be healthy enough to do that, but he doesn't. He's not healthy enough to play in playoff games for his own team. He's been out the last 8 games of the regular season with knee swellness, which is the same thing that's been plaguing him, whether it's his thigh or his knee or whatever, ever since he was in San Antonio. So the interesting thing about this game is the Clippers were actually up I think close to 30 at one point, and they almost blew it. And that's interesting because that's the script that Dallas and other teams have used against the Clippers, where they come back against them late in games when they have big leads, and the Clippers cannot figure out a way to get those games home. So tonight, James Harden showed up, and that was the difference. James Harden came out. Everybody talks about his playoff performances and guys like Westbrook and what do they do in the playoffs, la 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 la. Since those guys were in OKC or Houston or wherever, right? They've always said that about them. And they got it home tonight. I would be interested though to see, because what happens in a series like this is momentum can shift. Even when you win the game, it can shift against you. And what I mean by that is we're going to talk about that too. What happened in the Lakers game, because they won the first half, but at the end of the first half, the momentum shifted, and you could feel that they were not going to win that game. Even though they were leading on the scoreboard, you knew that it wasn't going to last because of the way that the momentum had shifted, especially when you're at home and then the crowd gets into it and it's like, oh no, this is all bad, because then every mistake you make is so magnified that that one little pass that D'Lo made or whatever, right? But that's exactly what the Clippers have been doing against teams like the Mavs in the playoffs, where they get these big leads and then they blow them at the end. And we know that whether it's been Denver or other teams that have done that, and Dallas at times who have done that in big games against the Clippers, where you're just like, dude, what is going on, right? So really interesting to see how that series plays out, because Dallas had some momentum coming at the end of that game and they just ran out of time. But you wonder, if they had played another quarter, I think that game may very well turned out a different way. And if Dallas can keep that momentum going to start the next game, they could still steal a game in LA and go home and have 2 games at home and have it even, which is not good. That means you steal home court and there's no more advantage for the home team that should have the advantage from being the higher seed, right? So we're going to see how those things play out, see if Luka and Kyrie can come up with something interesting. PJ Washington was obviously getting into it with some people there and whatnot. And so we'll see what happens. Um, the other game that happened, the first game of the day today on Sunday, was Boston and Miami, and you got to feel for Miami, because they came and gutted out a really tough win against Chicago for the second year in a row to eke into the playoffs, and the team that they beat in the Eastern Conference Finals to get to the finals, to lose to Denver last year. they get in the first round, and that team is a different team that's playing the best as they ever have because they have Drew Holiday and Porzingis and all these guys now, plus a more seasoned Brown and Tatum who are learning from their mistakes. Derek White's been playing out of his mind. They're so happy. I remember when they eventually were going to get rid of Brogdon or White after they made all those deals because they couldn't have the extra guard or the extra payroll. A lot of people were like, "Oh no, keep Brogdon, get rid of White." They ended up getting rid of Brogdon and Robert Williams to Portland, and thank God they kept Derek White, man, because that guy has been huge for them. Being able to handle the ball and do whatever needs to be done on defense, and he has just been fantastic. And Boston's got a really strong like top six guys, and they have some wily veterans like Horford on the bench who just knows how to get things done. Physically, he can't really do it as well as he used to when he was in other places or in his first tenure in Boston. But he knows how to get it done, and he's trying to win a title with Boston. That's why he keeps coming back to the Celts. So really interesting to see how all those things played out. But Boston ultimately gets to win 114-94. Miami obviously doesn't have Jimmy Butler, who went down with an MCL sprain, but they haven't played well, really. Miami hasn't played great this season, no matter who's on the floor. And they actually haven't played too bad record wise without Jimmy, but that just goes to show you. I think Miami's in the transitional phase right now. They went out and got Scary Terry to try to help them this year and all that, but I think their window is kind of closing. They need to figure out what to do with Hero because I don't think he's the next guy. I think he's the guy they need to use to do something different. So I think that's going to be a big thing. And we're going to see how that goes. And that leads us to Saturday's games, which were where the playoffs really began officially once all the seeds from the play-ins were kind of settled in and everybody knew where they were going to be sitting. The first game that happened Saturday was kind of a stinker, which was a really weird game. I watched it, which was the Cavaliers versus the Magic. The Cavs being the higher seed, and the Magic. I don't know what offense they're trying to run, but they're not running an offense. I don't know what the Magic are doing on offense. They play good defense, and for a lot of this game, they held the Cavs to not much outside. Spider Mitchell eventually got going, but hey, you're only going to hold a player as good as him down for so long. And then at the very end of the game, Garland started splashing threes on him, and that's not good. If you have Spider going at you and then you have Garland splashing threes, you're going to lose. That's just point blank period. That's what's going to happen. Um, but the Magic had so many opportunities in this game, and I think the game was actually a lot closer than 97-83, which was the final score. But it was really bizarre to watch the Magic because every time they would come down, they just kind of played hot potato, like, "Oh, I don't want it, I don't want it," and then eventually the ball ends up with Paolo, and he just launches up a shot and bricks it off the front of the rim, and then they run back down. It's like, can you run a play or a pick and roll, or can you move around? Can you do something on offense that's not just like shoot it at the rim. Shoot it at the rim. As soon as you touch it, shoot it at the rim. Or pass it to that guy, shoot it at the rim. Um, that was their offense. And so I don't know who, when I was watching that game, I was like, how do the Magic, I'm sure they have some sophisticated set plays to run. Like maybe they should call something and run something. I don't know if it's they just don't have a point guard. Suggs was getting involved in that game early and then he kind of got hurt with his shoulder. And I don't know what happened there, but maybe they need more Cole Anthony in there to try to organize those guys and get them going in a direction. But Paolo should not be the guy bringing the ball up. I mean, he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he shouldn't be the guy bringing the ball up every single time and trying to get you in an offense because the offense ends up being him taking a shot at the rim every time. And so I think if the Magic can somehow figure out a way to generate some offense and just have some normalcy to their offense, their defense is good. They have Isaac and all these other guys that can lock you down. So I don't really see. I mean, you're not going to lock Mitchell down completely. They can stay in the game if they can just figure out a way to score and make it at least interesting toward the end and maybe take a couple games. And you never know. I mean, if you can really find an offense that can flow and have a game where Mitchell really can't get anything going, maybe you can push the Cavs and make it really interesting. But without offense, if the Magic don't find some offense, they're going to be out real quick, real quick. Suns T Wolves was interesting. The game started with the Suns kind of, the way these playoff series start is the home team kind of has all this momentum because the fans are really excited to start the series and the game. And then it's really up to the road team to kind of weather that first quarter storm and get through it. And then the game kind of normalizes and evens out a little bit. And then the talent portion starts taking over. At the beginning of this game, I thought the T Wolves were in big trouble because the Suns were up on them like 10 at one point and stuff. And it was during the period where all the fans were really excited. I was like, oh no, because that means that when the game evens out, and the nerves calm down, like the Suns are going to just continue on. And I don't know if the Teals can catch them, but the difference was Anthony Edwards. Dude, I in the playoff review that I did for these playoffs, I said if Anthony Edwards turns into that guy in this playoff series and emerges, I don't know if he's ready or not. He seems like he is, but if he turns into that guy, the Suns are not going to win. And if he doesn't, then the Suns are in six because that's you're going against KD, Booker. These guys have been to the finals, multiple times. They understand what it takes. Beal is really good, even though he hasn't really won a lot in his career. He can hit wide open shots and he can dribble and penetrate and all the things you need to do. And the Suns have been better lately on running offense and cleaning up the boards and all that stuff that they struggled with earlier in the year. Nurkic has been really good for them. He's a good, solid big down low. So I don't know. You know, I don't know what you do with Ant Edwards because he had a lot of wide open jumpers, and they even had KD on him to try to stop him a lot of that time, and that wasn't working either. And when that's not working, that's scary. So can Ant continue to play like that? I don't know. Probably not quite to that same level, but at home maybe. But the Suns only have they've got to figure out a way to get a game in Minnesota at some point if they want to win this series, and they've got to win all their home games, or some combination. If they can get two in Minnesota, then great. But then you've got to, so something's got to happen here that changes this dynamic. Cat's back. He's not playing great, but he's playing good enough. Basically, what they're doing is really smart because they're going, hey, when Ant is out of the game, Cat doesn't have his wind yet, but we'll just, Ant will be out of the game for 10 minutes here, in the first half, or not 10 minutes, but 5 minutes here in the first half and 5 minutes in the second half. And during those 5 minute stretches, we're just going to go to Cat because he can score for us. And that's all he's really got in the tank to do at this point is those little spurts. And it works perfectly. And maybe that's what they should do moving forward, just as a team in general, because it seems to work a lot better. Early in the game, I was really concerned about Minnesota because they were having Ant and other guys bring the ball up that were like losing the ball, and that's what contributed to the Suns' early lead. And I was like, hey, you guys have Mike Connolly. Like, what are you doing? Like, give the ball to Mike Connolly. Let him set it up. Let him set the table, calm everybody down. And sure enough, eventually they got to that. And then Ant started, doing better on offense and not turning the ball over and hitting shots, even in KD's face, talking crap to KD. That's his slippery slope. But KD is an older guy now, and I don't know if athleticism wise he can do anything about it. But he's a great player, and he could certainly give it back to Ant on offense. And if KD gets hot from offense, and he was a little bit early in this game, but if he gets really hot, watch out. And Devin Booker did not play well at all in this game, and Beal didn't really play great either. So, I mean, if either of those guys starts to wake up, this series should be a lot closer. But once again, Minnesota, all they did was win their first home game, which is what you're supposed to do when you're the higher seed. So it doesn't really change anything about the series, but it does maybe put a little bit of doubt in the Suns' mind that, hey, like, can we do this? We just lost this game by 25, and we started really well. So we'll see what happens. They're a veteran team with a lot of good players on it. I think they're just going to flush that game and move on, and we'll see what happens in game two. The other game that was really interesting, Joel Embiid had this off the backboard dunk that was really amazing, and then he stayed down. People thinking maybe his knee is not 100% right, or that he re-injured it. But the Knicks do end up pulling it out again at home, 111-104. The concerning thing about this game to me for the Knicks is when you're watching the game, it felt like the Knicks were playing pretty good most of the game, and they only won by 7 at home. So this series is interesting because if Embiid is healthy and can stay on the floor, I think that the Sixers can pull off at least one, if not more than one win in New York because this game a lot went right for them. And if Embiid had went out hurt and a couple of those shots that guys like Deuce made that don't normally go in, don't go in, this game might have been the Sixers, right? And so that's concerning if I'm looking at this game as a Knick fan. If I'm the Sixers, even though I lost, I feel pretty good still going into game two because I'd be like, hey, if we'd had Joel on the floor those extra few minutes when we thought he was hurt, and if a couple of those guys don't hit shots they never ever hit, we win this game, right? Like, so, I mean, that's really how you have to look at it in a long series, right? Because it's about who wins four first. It's not about who wins one or who wins two or which game you win and which game you don't. It's about, although home court wise, it kind of is, but overall it's not, because you just need to win four. And so what the Sixers did is they found out a little bit of the formula and not even playing that great. So if Maxi has a little bit of a better game, Batum played really well. He's been playing well, and he's talking about retiring after this year. And I'm like, dude, like I know you've been traded a few times, but you're playing like Batum's playing as good as I've ever seen him. If I was him, I would play at least one more year. He'd even go to another contender. Like imagine if Batum went somewhere like Denver. Like he'd be perfect for them off the bench. Like why would you retire? But maybe he's just done. Maybe he just wants to play for his home country, Paris, in the Olympics this year, and then or France, obviously in Paris in the Olympics this year, and then call it a career. And he's had a pretty good one, especially as a role player. But Batum's been playing really well lately. Really good role player for the Sixers. I think the Sixers are surprised that they got as many good role players as they did out of that trade for James Harden, because they've got Morris and some of these other guys. And Batum is the one that they probably thought was just a throw in for salary or whatever that they were probably thinking about waiving. And I bet you now they're probably glad they didn't do that. So fantastic. Knicks hold and they get the actual victory to take a 1-0 lead in the series at home, but that's what they were supposed to do, and they were really close to not doing that. Now on to the final of 8, right? We went over the 4 games in the East. We went over 3 of the series games that happened in the West, and the last one, and one of the more interesting things, is the Lakers and Nuggets. Man, when this game started, um, the first 18 minutes of this game, you were like, oh man, the Lakers might have figured this out. Like they were playing mistake free. AD was looking like he was not afraid of Joker. No, Joker was giving him a little bit, but Joker wasn't dominating the game. He had a couple of great plays. He wasn't dominating. Murray was cooking a little bit, and stuff like that, but they weren't able to really get into everything they wanted to do. Gordon's shots were clanking. And there were some guys. Gordon was in foul trouble, and so they were trying to. The Nuggets were already. Mike Malone looked like he called a timeout early, even though later in the press conference after the game when they won, he was like, "Oh no, we were good." Like la 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 la. It's like, yeah, right, dude. When they went down 12, he looked worried. He looked like, uh-oh, like we're letting LeBron us. But here's one of the things with LeBron at this point in his career. LeBron will take, at the end of the half, he takes this weird half court three. And he did this in the regular season a lot. Then he comes back down a few minutes later when the Nuggets are still kind of in the midst of a run, and he misses one, right? If he had taken that ball to the basket, it would have probably ended that run and made this a lot closer game. Now, you could argue about D'Lo. I understand. But look, if you're looking for D'Lo to win you this series, like, yes, if he gets hot, it's going to help you in any game, and you will probably win that game. But he's not the guy that's going to win you the series. It's just not going to happen that way. He is not a good enough player to overcome Jokic and Murray. If he can give you anything, that's great. And early in this game, D'Lo did give them some nice baskets. He misses a layup later. He made a really stupid, lazy pass that got intercepted that helped extend a Denver run, and then he didn't run out on a shooter, which was KCP. But this is what the Lakers have done all year. They don't run out on three-point shooters, and it's just agonizing to me how flagrant they refuse to close out on shooters. Look, Denver moves the ball really well and they execute really well. That's a fact, right? But no matter how well a team execute against you, right? You can still run out on the shooter. It doesn't mean you're going to get to him to block the shot. It doesn't mean you may even get within a foot of him if you're that far away because you had to double team Joker or whatever, right? But you still run at him and close out anyway with your hands up, and you can stomp or some guys yell or whatever, because that does make a difference when a guy is shooting. Even a pro, like, it might make just enough a difference for that ball to clank off the iron and give you another possession. And every possession matters against a team that executes the way that Denver does. And at the end of the game, the Lakers are looking around going, man, we just need a couple extra possessions because they played them even in the fourth quarter. So they outscored them in the first quarter. They barely got outscored in the second quarter. The third quarter, they lay an egg and have a run on them, and then they play them even in the fourth quarter. So Denver really only had one great quarter that was good, and the Lakers had a couple quarters that were pretty good. And the other quarter was kind of back and forth, and it wasn't that bad. So the Lakers had the ingredients together, and they just let it get out of control. And you just can't do that. Like LeBron's over here, clapping at D'Lo, and I'm like, dude, like you're gonna kill this guy's confidence. Like I understand that you're right about what you're saying, and so where he shouldn't have made a lazy pass, but you can't kill his confidence, especially against this team where there's already a history of that happening, right? So like, don't do that. Just let him go. Now, D'Lo, I will say the one thing that was encouraging about this game, despite the 1 for 9 from three thing with D'Lo, is he had a lot of really good looks. And I'm going to tell you right now, I know Denver does not respect him because of what happened last year and obviously what happened in this game. And they're right now they're probably going, this is the perfect strategy. I'm telling you right now, if you keep leaving D'Lo open, he's going to catch fire. And if he catches fire, you will lose the game because he is that kind of scorer. He can score 50 points in like 2 quarters if he gets going. Like he is that good, and he can really get cooking on the offensive side. So I'm interested to see what happens in game two. Once again, Denver wins, but I do think in the first half they got a little bit of a scare where they did not look super confident um, up until the final like 2 minutes when they made that little run to get back in it. They carried it into the third quarter. Kudos to them. The Lakers were able to come back, at least even it out in the fourth, but they were down too much for it to matter. So they do lose 114-103. But going into the second game, got to remember, the Lakers just need to get one. I thought game one was huge because I thought if the Lakers could come out and win, just like you saw the confidence kind of shaken in that first half with Denver until they kind of got going. If the Lakers could have carried that through that game somehow and just got the win, even by 1 point or whatever, Denver would have went into game two going, man, maybe they can beat us. And that we played pretty good and they still won. And that's the thing the Lakers failed to do at the end of that game. Then they let it go after having a really good first half. And if the Lakers can somehow figure out a way to do that in game two and then go back to LA for 2 games, this is going to be an interesting series. If the Lakers let this happen again, they are going to go home and they are probably going to get swept at home. So they've got to figure out a way in game two to make this work. Now there's talk Christian Wood's going to come back in game three and whatever. Well, if you don't win game two, you're in big trouble because even though it's just so for all these other series, yes, it's really just holding it home when the first team wins the first 2 games. But the Lakers and Denver specifically, because of the history there, like the Nuggets know they can win in LA. They did it last year and swept the Lakers. They beat them twice in LA. Yes, they were good competitive games, and the Lakers tried really hard. They were really close in one of those games, but it's not going to happen. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to happen. Like if the Lakers go back down to LA and they are down 2-0, this series is pretty much going to be done because the confidence level and everything is just not going to be there. If they can get game two somehow, that's their shot. So game one, they had a shot at it. They made a really good effort. If they can somehow just close out on a shooter, run toward him, don't give up. The thing about D'Lo and Austin is when their shots aren't going in, they start getting lazy on closeouts. And when you get lazy on a closeout against a team like Denver, you pay. You may not get close enough to but look at what happened in the first quarter, right? Why was Michael Porter Jr. and KCP not hitting the same shots that they ended up hitting later in the game? It's because the Lakers had energy on defense and were running fully to do their closeouts. And that made enough of a difference, just a little bit, for them to miss a couple extra shots. Later on in the game, the Lakers, it's the same shot Denver has, running the same play, running the same thing. The other thing is that the Lakers need to stop blitzing Jamal Murray with 2 people. Look, if he's going to score, he's going to score. But what you don't want to do is give them a wide open three every time down. And every time you blitz with 2 people, there are certain strategic moments you can get away with blitzing him or Jokic with 2 people, but they're too good of a passing team. They're going to find the open man. You cannot do that on a consistent basis. You're creating your own worst enemy, which is wide open threes, on a team that doesn't shoot a lot of threes but can make them. We all know KCP is one of the reasons we beat Denver in 2020. That's why the Lakers beat Denver. Because they had guys like KCP and they had Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee to help deal with Jokic so that AD didn't have to just sit there and deal with him all game. I got news for you, AD. You're going to have to deal with him all game. All game. Because you can't get in foul trouble, because if you either don't deal with him the whole game or you get in foul trouble, your team's going to lose. So the Lakers have a very thin margin, and they figured out, at least they know the pathway. If they can play the way they did in the first half for 2 halves, that game's going to be right there. But if they give up the open threes, and they keep doing stupid crap like double teaming for no reason. Look, Jamal Murray's a really good player, and when he does a step back from 25 feet away, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. It doesn't matter if there's one guy or two guys standing in front of him. It doesn't matter. So the least you can do is seal off the other guys so that if he gets into a bad situation at the end of the shot clock or whatever, that at least it's a really hard shot. At least it's that. But don't blitz with two guys. You're putting yourself at an immediate disadvantage, and it's not smart. So we're going to see what happens with these game twos. Really interesting start to the NBA playoffs. It's all about the adjustments, and we're going to see how these teams adjust and how the coaching is. And Darvin, I hope you have something in the tank to help your team, because if not, I think you're going to be looking for a job this summer, my guy. So they get swept again. I don't know what you could argue to get Darvin Ham back in there. Whether it's Phil Handy or somebody else, I don't know. But I don't think the Lakers are going to want to see. I don't think the players are going to want to see Darvin Ham back if they get swept again. Use timeouts better. Your rotations are not great. Why would you ever play three guards against Denver? They're too big. I don't know what you were thinking. You're not going to outrun them just because you have smaller guys on the floor. So if that's the thought process, crumple it up and throw it away. Not going to work. Michael Porter Jr. is 6'10". Aaron Gordon 6'10". Joker's 7 feet tall. They were playing DeAndre Jordan, who's 6'11", 7 feet tall. I don't know why you think that you're going to play three guards. That all that means is that a team that already has a rebounding advantage on you, you're giving them a bigger rebounding advantage. And in this game, second chance points came off of what? Rebounds. How much did you lose by in second chance points? I think it was like 18. Okay, you lost the game by 13. Not the only reason, but it's a pretty big one, right? No more three guard lineups, Darvin. Get rid of that crap, or you're going to be looking for a job. I'm telling you right now, it's just cannot play three guards against Denver. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. To me, whenever I see that, I go, okay, he's done with this game, because it's just clearly not going to happen. Like, you cannot play three guards against Denver at any point together. You can play three guards, but they have to be in a rotation, which is good. I think rotating D'Lo a little bit with Gabe and Spencer is not the worst thing in the world, and it gives different looks for Murray. And obviously, we saw Gabe Vincent did an okay job on Murray. I mean, Murray's going to get his no matter what. But if you can just get him a few points lower than his normal averages or something, he shouldn't be just lighting the Lakers up constantly. So, if that means they need to inject Vando's knee with something to get him back on the court for a series, then hey, whatever. But I'm sure they're trying really hard to get him and Wood back. But, the problem is by the time they get Wood back in game 3, it's going to be too late if they do not win game 2. If they win game 2, they buy themselves time to make those type of adjustments. But the problem is those Lakers are going to figure out something that works, and they're going to be down 3-0 by the time they figure it out. You know what I mean? You can't do that. You have to win a game. They have got to win this next game. If the Lakers do not win game 2, this is done real quick, because they are not going to have any confidence going back to LA. It's going to look like a funeral procession. I'm just telling you right now. It looked the same way last year. And the Lakers will battle, and they'll try, and LeBron's pride and whatever, but you're still going to have less points in Denver when the game ends. So you better win game 2 so that you at least give yourself a fighting chance, right? You don't win game 2, yeah, not going to be good. So we'll see. Darvin do better. D'Lo will start making some shots. He'll make a couple open shots, and at least he's getting those shots, so that's good. But some other guys have to score. Like, literally, like, nobody scored off the bench for the Lakers in that game. Like, nobody. Like, literally nobody. Like, literally nobody. Or like they had 11 from like one guy, and he was Torian. That was it. Give Rui some more shine. Rui on offense can play, and not a lot of people like to guard him. Rui can hit wide open threes. He's gotten really good at that. So maybe they need to play differently on offense. And then having Rui on the perimeter is going to pull out some of these big guys that are clogging up the lane, and where the Lakers want to go is in the paint, right? So if you can get Rui out to the 3-point line, then Gordon or Porter or whoever's guarding him has to go out there, and it's going to make it to where it's at least just Joker down there or whatever. The other thing is AD took quite a few threes in that game too, and AD, I get it, but like, the reason they're leaving you open is because they want you to take that shot. They don't want you inside against Joker. They want you to take a 3 because you're not a very good 3-point percentage shooter. I know he made the one shot in game 2 in 2020 in the bubble, but that was really an outlier. AD's not a good 3-point shooter, like in general. He's a decent mid range shooter. He used to be better as a mid range shooter. Like 2020, he was a really good mid range shooter. Now he's just kind of okay. But we're gonna see what happens. So please subscribe, guys. I always appreciate it. Like, subscribe. That's what helps everything. And leave comments about what you'd like to see or don't want to see, or other feedback you'd like to have perspective about. All right. Till next time.